Hello world, it's Robotron 2003, Kapla, and welcome to another episode of SmashTeeVee. Nightmare Beach. A convicted criminal gets the death penalty, his head gets fried, but a year later he comes back with a vengeance as an evil biker who stalks spring breakers and shocks them to death with his bike. If you weren't convinced of the type of movie this is by that description, you need to watch more bad 80s movies. There's boobs, there's blood, there's terror, there's cheese. A lot of cheese. Old and a little bit moldy cheese, but cheese nevertheless. Nightmare Beach, to me, was a spring break where you're locked in your room looking out of the window. You can see there's fun to be had somewhere, but it's too far away to fully embrace. Drop that. Year of the Dragon is a 1985 movie wherein Mickey Rourke plays an unlikable rough-and-tumble cop who becomes obsessed with destroying a Chinese-American drug ring. On his path towards justice, he gets increasingly involved into the world of violence, breaking the rules in order to bring down mob bosses and their gangs. Year of the Dragon is gritty, unapologetic, and reminds me a lot of Chinatown, though depicted in a later era. Rourke plays an unlikable, misogynistic and even racist bastard of a cop. His acting is unflinching and brutal. His stellar performance and the script, co-written by Oliver Stone, make this a compelling movie which, unfortunately, gets dragged down by some very subpar performances by co-stars and dragged-out scenes. Overall, if you like gritty, neo-noir cop movies, this is certainly one to check out. Check that. Appaloosa is a 2008 Western movie written, directed and acted by Ed Harris, who pretty much plays the prototype version for the character he played in the remake of Westworld by HBO. Accompanied by Viggo Mortensen, they are hired by a small town as sheriffs being beset by the tyrannical rule of a rancher. Matters get more complicated with the arrival of a young widow whose allegiance seems quite variable. Appaloosa is a modern Western movie that starts off great. The camaraderie between Harris and Viggo's character is endearing and it offers some interesting possibilities. Unfortunately, it feels like the movie gets stuck in first gear and it never really lifts off. If you have already seen a lot of Western movies, be sure to check this one out. If you're just starting off, begin with Tombstone and the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns first. Check that. Dark Angel. The Ascent is a 1994 film about a demoness who flees hell and ends up on Earth, where she encounters a handsome doctor with whom she falls in love. Seeing the corruption around her, however, she starts to deal with her own kind of justice, something which brings her into trouble with both the laws of man and those of the angels and God above. Dark Angel is a quaint movie. Its typical mid-90s levels of kitsch are a little too much to bear, but it hides an interesting concept within which could very well have become a decent series. The props and cinematography aren't on par to today's standards, but remains very enjoyable if you can look past this. It helps too that the main characters are both very attractive and ripped right out of an episode of Melrose Place. This movie deserves props for its originality, and I would definitely like to see a modern-day remake of this. Check that. J.R. Bob Dobbs and the Church of the Subgenius is a 2019 documentary on the Church of, you guessed it, the Subgenius. A mock religion turned read religion, or is it? Featuring a bunch of self-proclaimed weirdos worshipping at the feet of J.R. Bob Dobbs. We follow the story of the two inventors of the church in that all too typical documentary way from the beginnings of the church to modern day. As someone who came into contact with Bob and Subgenius in the late 90s, I never really understood whether the church is a parody or not. Quite frankly, it's both, and as the documentary shows, things do get out of hand as time progresses. The only thing that bothered me about the documentary is the sudden inclusion of the Trump era, which quickly skewed the documentary in a certain direction. Luckily, the more they showed of this new time period, the more sense it made, giving a quite nuanced and, in my opinion, centered look at how a church that praises mockery and disinformation can still find relevance in a world that embraced folly, fake news, and has, for many of us, turned upside down. If you know nothing about the Church of the Subgenius, do check this out, though it's far less entertaining than the books and other magazines they have released since their inception. Check that. Starman. An alien race picks up the message Earthlings sent into space with the Voyager 2 probe and sends one of them to Earth. The alien crashes and finds himself taking the form of a young widow's husband who he asks to drive him from Wisconsin to Arizona. Chased by the government, the two grow closer as both of them slowly learn what humanity is all about. Starman, first and foremost, is a romantic movie of a quirky, otherworldly alien who tries to fit in. Jeff Bridges is kooky but lovable, and the chemistry between him and Karen Allen is there enough to make this an enjoyable movie, not unlike, though not as good as, E.T. and Batteries Not Included. The ending of the movie is a bit underwhelming, but if you're a fan of this movie you can always continue the story in the 1986 series with the same name. Check that. Nekrotronic is a surprisingly well-made and entertaining Australian science fiction/horror comedy movie about two sewage cleaners who discover a demonic plot to take over the world through the powers of the internet. Despite its ridiculous premise of demons possessing humans via the internet, has some good humor, compelling action and some surprisingly well-done special effects. You can consider this movie as a sort of combination between a modern-day Ghostbusters, Tron and no specific gory horror movie. Oh. And did I mention Monica Bellucci is in this? Nekrotronic isn't high art, but definitely give this a watch, you won't regret it. Smash that. The Invention of Lying shows us a world where lies and deceit does not exist. We follow Ricky Gervais, who plays a loser who suddenly has the power to tell a lie and decides to use this power to get ahead in life. The Invention of Lying is an entertaining semi-romantic comedy that offers enough smiles to make the movie entertaining. Ricky Gervais' humor is quite particular, but his clean wit and sharp tongue-in-cheek jabs resurface plenty of times in this film. Unfortunately, the whole concept is a bit muddled. More often than not, the characters in this world blurt out things and it feels like it doesn't fit the concept of being honest all the time. Religion gets dragged into it fairly quickly, making this movie a target of atheists and religious people who, with their own colored glasses, will inject their own truth into it. Upon reflection, however, I do think it fits, as not having a lying filter would also signify that people would not be silent about things. The concept of a world without lying is so foreign that it's hard to get your head wrapped around it, and due to this the movie might appear to fail. I've decided that it has not failed me, however. Find out for yourself. Check that. Die Influencers. Die has a social media star send 3 lesser influencers to a haunted house in order to get his view count up and ridicule and destroy the others in the process. Unfortunately, the haunted house actually is haunted by the spirit of a photo model who was killed by his assistant, and she is out for revenge. I bet this movie was written by a bunch of people who have a certain image of influencers and think they should be more important than them. The characters in this movie are such parodies of already strange individuals that it comes over as complete and utter mockery, though done very badly. It also does not help that a bunch of people, mostly over 45, attempt to play characters that are half their age, including the lingo and scantily clad clothing. I understand the actresses are fetish models, but I haven't seen anything less sexy than what I've seen in this movie for a while. The acting is atrocious, everything looks cheap, and it feels more like a school play than a serious movie. More authenticity, more budget and better writing could have saved this movie, but alas. Die Influencers Die is a piss-poor example of how to make a softcore horror movie. Drop that. Blackwater. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, 2 massive icons from the 80s, together in an action movie? Hell yes. Sign me up. Van Damme plays a CIA agent who finds himself captured and jailed on a submarine together with the mysterious Marcy played by Lundgren. A wider conspiracy pops up and the two, together with some unlikely allies, attempt to escape. The plot of this movie has all the ingredients of being an amazing close-quarters fight movie, but unfortunately the talent, production value and creativity are not there. Instead of great close-quarter combat in the vein of Old Boy, we get guns in a submarine. A submarine that's filmed in a sort of office building that's clearly too big. I know Van Damme and Lundgren aren't the youngest stars of the bunch, but there is more shooting, in a sub, than actually punching or kicking. In good conscience and taste, I simply cannot recommend this movie. It's boring, nonsensical, and simply not well done. Steer clear and go back to their classics. They're classics for a reason. Drop that.